August 24th, and I will ask staff to take a quick roll call.
Jared Vine.
Here.
Wayne Clark.
Yes.
Rossi Manka.
Here.
Eric Torkelson.
Here.
Catherine Degenhart.
Here.
Jessica Katzenmeyer.
Here.
Brian Frank.
Here.
David Roshka.
Here.
And Brandon Reike and Ben Holt are excused.
All right. So we do have a quorum present. Next up will be the approval of the minutes from our meeting on the 27th of July.
Move to approve.
Second.
So a motion by Brian Frank and a second by Jessica Katzenmeyer. Any changes or amendments to the minutes? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. The minutes are approved. And we'll go right to item D and take up items 2A and 2B. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is for the next phase of development at the market at 6 Points or Makers Row. Under construction right now are the lofts at Sona or south of National. So we're real creative with those types of terms, but it's catchy. But the lofts are currently under construction, and more recently, there's been a building permit submitted for this development on the corner. Both of these were before the Plan Commission in late of December of 2020 and then approved by the Council in January of 2021. So we're looking at this section right now. It's a separate lot. It was approved by a CSM about a year ago as well, and consists of roughly about a little over 13,000 square feet of new commercial space. It'll be like a food cluster or food-centric in many ways, with restaurants, event spaces, food product or producers, makers of sorts, perhaps a wine bar, and other types of destination uses that are local in nature. Local to as far as West Allis goes, or the Milwaukee metro area. The general hours of operation are going to be from 6 a.m. to midnight daily. It may be a little tighter than that, but we want to offer some flexibility in the range of hours and uses within this development. It's Zone C3 community commercial, which allows all of this as a conditional use. The event spaces, whenever you have 5,000 square feet or more of event space or restaurants, food production and so on, it does trigger a special use. So this, just for context, 66th Street, National Avenue, our farmers market is right here. There's residential across the street, and there's some public parking as well within the area. So just another bird's eye view, looking from Mitchell Street to the north. This is the west development, also by Mandel. Bob Monnett's here with us tonight from Mandel Group. And then this is the lofts. This is a dated picture, sometime late winter, early spring. It's much further along right now. It's really taking shape and form. But the site that we're going to be talking about is right here. And just another plan view of that area. It has access from Lapham Street and from 66th Street, as well as from National Avenue. I'm sorry, this is actually Mitchell Street down here. Lapham is over here. Typo here. It's another view of the certified survey map that was approved. In terms of the site and landscaping plans, it's the gold areas are the building areas. Consist of 3 buildings, and then there's outdoor patios proposed, which are in blue. And then the building, the parking and building services areas will be going to feature roughly about 47 or so parking spaces on site. And then there's additional parking outside of that on the Sona lofts and the other Makers Row project to the north. Some of the things that we were talked with Mandel about were adding a walkway through here, and then a screening around the dumpsters, as well as coordinating with our city forester to get updates to the site and landscaping plan. That updated plan is presented here. That walkway has been added. What it does is basically serves an internal walkway through the development, which stretches from Mitchell Street to the south here, all the way north through the development. You just thought this walkway here would add a nice access point to a future reception garden or patio behind the building here. And then also just with refuse enclosure and screening, that's all going to be provided on plans. This is just the green space that's being added. It's roughly about 15% green space. Trees have been added per the city forester's recommendation So we're pleased with the changes that have been made, and we can get to the staff recommendation a little bit later, but many of these things that have been added here have satisfied those recommendations in our staff report. So building 1 in gold here is about 5,700 square feet. Building 2 in blue is about 3,100 square feet, and then building 3, the pink reddish color, is 4,300 square feet. This one's going to be subdivided into probably potentially up to 4 spaces for different restaurant or maker spaces. And then these are going to be sort of larger venues where you could see perhaps a wine bar, event space, an outdoor reception area behind the building. And then this is going to be the anchor tenant. And we'll show some renderings in a bit here, but one of the inspirational, inspirations in the country. There's a Disc and Cider building in Nashville, Tennessee, and there's also in Denver, Colorado, there's a place called Little Man Ice Cream. And these were kind of concepts that were looked at, and they've sort of evolved into what we're seeing in the plans here for West Allis. Again, just sort of maker spaces, small local types of offerings, destination uses that attract people from all over, but are very unique, can be very unique and desirable to West Allis. And this is just the Diskin cider building. This is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like after. They're using sort of celebrating the sort of light industrial or industrial look of the building, and just sort of fabricating it with new metal siding, a lot of glass transparency. You can see in and out, and open garage doors that open up in nicer weather and close during the winter months. So this is the look that's proposed. 66th Street is here. Our farmers market would be kind of just across the street from where it says Dan by Architects, down on the bottom of the screen. And then this is if you were to extend Lapham Street to the west, it would be here. But this is all a private road into the development. And then the Phase 1 Makers Row is to the right, and then the lofts that are currently under construction are back here. So a very making of a dense neighborhood. Again, sort of an industrial and commercial look to the building. The wow feature on this Dairyland building here is going to be this milk can on the corner, which should be an attractive feature and one that sort of identifies it as in the neighborhood. And you can see just the different outdoor patios offered around the building. There's going to be a retaining wall added to create some separation between the public walk space here and internally within the development and in the development. And it does sort of mitigate some of those grades that are taking place. It's higher up here towards National Avenue, and then it falls off and gets lower as you get further south towards Mitchell. And the buildings are going to consist of just another look at ground level, looking at that sort of a similar view. A lot of the materials are going to be metal siding. We've discussed softening up this particular building in the staff report. The image that you had received was a little bit more Spartan of a look. What's been updated since that time are just some additional accent striping and branding, as well as on the exterior of the building a wood or sort of barn door type of look on either side of some of the windows and entrances to the building. And then naturally with that dairy, the milk can has definitely got some articulation to it with it's going to reflect light a little bit differently and create some different shadows, just given the different panels that are being used on that, and certainly the variation in color, sort of the darker browns, the silvers, and then some grays, and then cedar paneling up above in some locations. Just another view of the building on the south of the Dairyland, and then the building on the far north. These are all sort of operable, in some cases, windows that will open up like an overhead garage door in the summer. And then just the elevation views, sort of taking a look at the different metal panels around the building. There's 3 different types of metal panels, and there's cedar cladding as well in these areas, behind the signage, underneath some of the window features, and then back here above the storefront entry system doors. These are operable overhead windows on the which would be the north side of the building. And there were some in the staff report. There were some areas that we had wanted to touch on with the developer, with Mandel, and they've since added those and added these barn doors, which we think satisfies that requirement. that we put in the staff report. We were also asking for a canopy over on the north side of the building, over the proposed outdoor dining area, which would be right here. The problem with the canopy, I think, is being on the north side of the building. It's going to be more or less in the shade. Adding a canopy just makes it a little bit colder. Talking to Bob earlier, he's open to doing something to better articulate this north elevation. He just doesn't want to do a canopy, and I guess we would agree with that, just based on the fact that this is the north side of the building, and perhaps there is a better way to just do some different skinning on this side of the building in this area here. So there is a somewhat of a flat canopy over the main entrance. We were suggesting maybe carrying it down a little further, but there's definitely something else we can work with the developer in this location to address that concern rather than a canopy. And just moving around the west elevation and the south elevation of the building, again, just some of the different features, metal paneling being continued around all four sides of the building, different colors and scale and dimension on that. There will be exterior lighting, accent lighting as well. They are going to be screening in the refuse area within a four-sided enclosure. One of those sides is going to be the building, of course, but they are proposing a cedar plank style of screen, which will fully enclose the dumpster area, which satisfies the staff recommendation. This is the detail of that. Roughly about 6 foot 6 inches tall, and cedar siding. 7 feet tall. They have submitted a lighting plan. They are proposing pedestrian lighting along those walkways, as well as around the exterior of the building and within the parking lot areas. We don't think it's going to create a nuisance for any surrounding uses. The light limits do fall off drastically at the property lines, and that's usually where you have city street lighting anyway, so it's we don't see that as being any more objectionable than maybe what a city street light is today in that area. Along 66th Street, there are a number of bioswales and bump outs that are currently been going in over the past 6 months or so. And they're wrapping up, nearing completion. So that'll really enhance the look of not only what this development's doing, but then within our public right-of-way here. It's really going to sort of make it a lot easier to cross the street between the farmers market and this development. And then National Avenue improvements will also be taking place next year in 2023, just to sort of extend what's been done near our fire department on 73rd Street here on National, further east into the 6 Points area. So staff is recommending approval, subject to the conditions in your staff report. We feel that, I've crossed off some of these here, like D, we have a lighting plan. We have a pedestrian connection that's been added. We have refuse screening plan. We've recently got the updated landscaping, and we'll have forestry just check over the list and just the distribution of plants. But we feel more or less that those things have been satisfied to meet the intent of our recommendation. We would like to work with the developer on point B. It may not be a canopy over that outdoor patio area on the north side of the building, but I think maybe some additional considerations of some different skinning in the exterior building or articulation outside of the building would serve that side well, and I think we can work that out. And we feel that A has been satisfied with those barn doors that have been added to just sort of further articulate that the Dairyland building on the corner. So if there's any questions, happy to ask. Yeah, sure.
Could you go back to the elevations?
Sure.
Steve? The next one with the south elevation. Did staff have any concerns with that south elevation? That it starts to look a little bit plain, and that is still kind of visible if you're coming up. If you're heading east. Was there any discussion on that elevation, or staff?
So on the south elevation, this is the side that would face the Higgins property.
Yep.
I think for the most part, with the Higgins property, they do have an outdoor storage yard around their property, and there's going to be a new fence. They're putting in a cedar fence along the street frontage, and then the rest of it is like a chain link fence. From the view, I think that you'd see from the street. You're going to definitely see this patio, the elevated patio area, and then I guess where the windows are.
Yep.
I think beyond that, I guess we didn't really think this part would be very would stand out too much.
I tend to agree. I guess my only comment was going to be, and obviously I don't want to add cost to this project for them, but I wondered on the east elevation, they've got the tall windows with the cedar panels above, and I wonder if they'd be able to carry the cedar panels above the tall windows here too, just so it looks like
I see what you mean, yeah.
it goes together.
Sure.
It's not a deal breaker for me, but
Like these features here.
correct,
just to sort
correct,
of
because it
wrap
does
those.
wrap the corner there. I don't know if that.
Okay.
Well, if you go back to that south elevation,
Sure.
so there's, this elevation right here
Yep.
is, faces right out into this there's a parking lane right here between us and Higgins.
Yep.
And, on the opposite side of the parking, we're doing some screening to help try to
Perfect.
close in the Higgins yard. the
Yeah,
outdoor
absolutely,
service yard.
absolutely.
This area here, I guess what I'd like your attention, to that elevation.
Yep.
I'd like to come back with, something that we're doing on the first phase building, which is we're using some super graphics
Okay.
on the building
Sure.
to give it a little bit more spice, if you will, than you would normally see.
Sure.
And this could be a candidate for that type of a graphic on the building face
Okay.
that would give a tenant some particular
Yep.
punch, if you will, some messaging. But we can also, I have no problem looking at that.
I think that's a
good
bigger
idea.
deal for
It's a nice idea.
I think that, yeah.
To pull that around.
You are going to lose. You're not going to where it drops off beyond those windows. I'm not really concerned about it. It just stuck out to me that I think if you carried those cedar panels around above the windows, it would tie the whole thing together.
And then the landscape, did any of the updates on the landscaping plan create any cover along this side of the building by any
Yeah,
chance?
let's going the wrong way. Let's take a look at that real quick.
And I'm glad you mentioned the landscape screening to the south because that was going to be one of my other questions.
No,
So
so
there-
we just have, so we have these two trees here that kind of,
Oops, sorry, it's that screen's live.
they
Yeah.
always do that. Try a little bit of cutoff here.
Sure,
but
sure.
Still, I think that, we've had customers, there it goes again. We had customers pulling into here
Yep.
and stuff that we park in here.
Yep.
Using this for messaging and to kind of complete the image of that building.
Yes.
I'm doing it, I'm touching the screen. Right?
It's a hot
Yep.
screen, yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
doing it for 6 years. I've been doing it.
Never
Still
fix that
changing
up.
my fingers on the screen. But that's, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. I appreciate it. No, I like the elevations. I think the materials are all good.
Now that I understand, I haven't been talking to these guys directly about this canopy issue.
Yeah.
I like
Yep.
that idea.
Okay.
And so I think that, we'll look at taking a larger canopy along that frontage because it'll cover the seating area as well.
Okay.
And to get one of those, one of those kind of big projecting canopies that you don't see in the US that often.
Yeah. All right.
That'd be a really cool
Okay.
treatment along there. And so I get it now. So
Okay, all
I
right.
think that's something we'll definitely come back to you guys on.
Fair enough. Sounds good.
And work again there.
I mean, even if the canopy isn't, to your point, if they just ran, some brake metal fascia or something that kind of carried that horizontal line across without necessarily projecting, I think that would help on that elevation. But
Okay. Well, sounds like we've got options.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
By the way, that trash room area, that, 3 sides of that trash area, this side coming out, 3 sides of it will be building wall.
Okay.
And so only the front here would be.
Would be
kind
the
of
part
open
with
to
the cedar.
to view.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's pocketed into the building
Right.
itself.
Okay.
is it totally open or is it getting gates on it or?
Gates across the front of it, so that.
It's a cedar panel.
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
tried to
perfect.
pass it up, but it's in here
Yeah.
somewhere.
But the other-
Yeah.
Just go back to that Dairyland.
Oh,
So
sure.
This Dairyland thing is, these guys are, the guy that owns Dairyland, he's one of the principal instructors at METC's Food and Beverage
Sure.
program. He teaches 4 classes in the morning there. He's one of the principal instructors. They have 3 locations in downtown Milwaukee right now, including this monster location in the 3rd Street Market Hall, which is kind of but this is gonna be their mothership, so this is where they're actually gonna have like a custard production place where kids can go up to the window and watch the custard being made and stuff like that. So we showed them I was in Denver several years ago and I saw this Little Man ice cream.
Yeah.
And with the line going literally all the way around the block waiting to get it. And so I said, we gotta do that sometime on a project in Milwaukee. But that Little Man ice cream, it's in every stinking visitor guide to Colorado. If you go to Denver, you gotta go to Little Man ice cream. And so we see this as one of those things that you kind of don't, it's like, you've got to be kidding me, you're going to do that. But it's the kind of thing where every kid's going to say, Mom, Dad, I want to go to the milk can for ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just that kind of an attractor. And these guys have, they've got like, it's cheeseburgers, fries, custard, shakes. It's kind of like the American, custard stand, roadside stand. So we've been working with them on all the theming around here. This red line here, that's actually a track on the side of the building, like on a barn, where these doors can move.
Okay.
Now, and we stole that idea. So we stole this idea from Denver. We stole that idea from Nashville. But in Nashville, I bet you those things never move. But just when you see it, you say, oh, those are like barn doors.
Sure.
They really want to come across with this dairy theme. And these guys are really good at what they do. They claim that they're the only guys in the state that actually raw batch their custard. Where they say everyone else, of course there's probably someone else that raw batches, but everyone else uses a mix.
Sure.
It's kind of like, Bisquick versus pancakes from scratch. So they're really excited about it, and they're really passionate about it. So we've been trying to accommodate as many of their ideas as we can. They go so far as to this pattern, this cow pattern here, and these kind of this blue and white, red, white, and blue thing going on in their logo. The pattern on the cow, these are actually their favorite lakes in the state of Wisconsin, and they put them together as a pattern, like you see on a Guernsey, on a dairy cow. So they're very invested in their brand and the quality of what they do, and the fact that this guy teaches best practices. They really got their act together. They really know what they're doing. So we're very excited to have them come to West Allis with us.
Thank you, Bob.
Any other questions or comments?
Or motions?
Or motions?
So I have a question. When does the construction start on this?
Well, the first phase building, which was approved previously, we recently got approval to pull a building permit for that building. So we'll start that building in the next 30 days. The site has been graded already, and the contractor's been engaged. We've got what's guaranteed as it can be, a guaranteed maximum price contract, which is good for the next 5 minutes these days. We've got a contractor. We have a majority of that building we have tenanted. So we'll start that building in the next 30 to 45 days. With the idea being that building would open mid next summer.
Okay.
This building, we don't have all the construction drawings done yet, so we're getting to the process where, with knowing that we have this, by the end of this evening, if this is the approval we get on this building, we then instruct our architects to proceed right away and prepare construction documents so we can get the pricing done on it, and then ultimately submit a plan set for review for building permit. So it's going to be a little bit, so we probably wouldn't start this building until late this fall, early winter, with the idea that it'll be open probably toward the end of 2023.
Okay. Gotcha.
I do have one.
Custard guys want it to be open right on June 1st.
If there's no change orders.
Yeah, well, yeah.
This is not directly related, but could we comment a little bit? Is the farmer's market parking okay?
Yeah. So back with the in the 2020 late proposal, there are a number of. I'm not sure if they've got a slide in here with that or not. Okay.
Did you go all the way to the first slide?
Oh, was there? Okay.
One of the first ones.
Oh, here. So there is shared parking. I think it was like 40 or so stalls over. This is shared parking basically within here, as well as this area. And then there's also off-site, other parking lots off-site. I mean, you have the municipal parking lot here.
Yep.
You have another 40 stalls north of the farmer's market. And then there's a nearby church that the city structured an easement with, where there's an additional number of parking stalls within a short walk. It's actually on this next block over from this one, over this way, kind of in that direction. But so there is other parking within the area. Also, just to the west of here, the city community development authority owns I think it's like roughly about a 2-acre, 3-acre site just south of Hope Brewing. And we're looking at that as potentially serving some off-street parking needs down the road as well, if it's not developed, which we don't think it is, because there's that other Kearney and Trecker building right on 68th and National. Yeah. Someday we hope for that to be developed, and that'll have potentially a number of users, and they'll probably need some off-street parking need in that area. So we think that that site would be suited well for maybe some off-street parking down the road as well.
Yeah, my only concern is that at peak hours, if there's overlap on all the uses here, is it going to be busy? But it is what it is, right?
It will be busy. I mean, that's it's in some respects a blessing too, as
Yeah,
it
sure.
does, I think, calm traffic, and they get more people out of their cars, maybe parking elsewhere and
Sure.
and walking up. But yeah, certainly, I mean, those are things that we're thinking about, and Bob, I know you're very cognizant of that as well.
When we came in for that first approval in late 2020.
Yeah.
So, I may be wrong in the number, but I think there's like 72 or 73
Okay.
public parking spaces available.
Along this kind of
It's all through here, all through
Okay.
here, all through the middle,
Yeah.
all through these two streets. This is available for public parking as well.
Okay.
That was part of our commitment back then was, hey, when we do this project, we're not gonna make this, we're not gonna go out there and police it.
Sure.
I mean, if people are going to the farmer's market, they park there.
No, I appreciate it. I know we talked about it.
It'll be a good thing.
Yep, I know it came up a couple years ago. I just wanted to
I'd rather
refresh
have
on
them
it.
parking there than parking a couple blocks,
Sure.
away. We want people to walk through and walk past these businesses.
Sure. Thank you.
Jessica?
What kind of restaurant tenants are you hoping to attract for the 4 spaces there?
Well, we have, we have 31,000 square feet of food and beverage space, which is a lot of space for the market. We have 61% of it already spoken for. So we have everything from artisan pizza, coffee, barbecue, hamburger, custard, etc. We have empanadas. We have a couple that is doing first in Milwaukee some Japanese selection of sweets, including special donuts, desserts, and a special boba tea that is very popular everywhere but Milwaukee right now. so they want to bring it to Milwaukee if that's their ethnicity. We have a wine purveyor who's going to be operating the event space, which is about about half the space is event space, and then overhead doors open up and it goes out to that reception garden, so they can do some sizable events there. And 1, 2, 3. So of the seven tenants that we currently have, half of them at least are currently businesses in West Allis that are growing, and half of them are coming into West Allis. So it's a really nice mix in that regard. And then complement, I mean, kind of interestingly, we have 5,200 square feet of commercial space in the Sona Lofts building. And we have this end cap right here, which is 3,500 square feet, is an expansion and a relocation of a Irish, English, French, kind of a European importer that's currently in business in Milwaukee. They're relocated to West Allis. We've been chasing them with the same staff for a while. They liked it. They backed off. They liked it. They backed off, and they came back. So sometimes you just got to stick with them. But they have a huge following. They'll be down at Irish Fest. So, because they have a huge part of their business that's Irish imported foods and stuff. And if that's what you do, and if that's what you want, these guys are kind of like best in state for that type of product. So that's kind of a little adjunct addition that'll help kind of spread the theme. They're also wanting to do an Irish whiskey bar, which but we got to make sure we can get a license for them to do that.
You can.
So
Yeah.
so that's a whiskey bar. Yeah, but they have someone that does all this Irish breakfast, and they want to do this really kind of unique thing. But that's kind of ancillary to their main line of business, which is just literally selling all the foodstuffs and all the imports that they have. It's all food product that they import. It's not, they're not selling kilts and other stuff. They're selling stuff, they're selling like a grocery store. And people come from all over the state to shop here.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's kind of cool, and they're moving to West Allen.
yeah, I really appreciate that you're putting the focus on local and regional too, because I'm really big on supporting local and regional.
Oh,
so.
yeah. Well, the best part of the story of West Allis in the last 6 or 7 years since we've been working here is this proliferation of the food and beverage scene and the reputation that West Allis has gained as kind of the place where it's kind of like the incubator for the food and beverage industry. And that's exactly what our theme was when we first presented this whole project to the city was, let's build off the farmer's market, because all the chefs come here anyway to buy all their vegetables and everything. All the best chefs will come here and buy their stuff. So we wanted to play off of that. And a couple of these businesses that are going in here are chefs that currently shop at the farmer's market. So they said, hey, this is a natural, I want to be here. So they're pretty excited about it. So the farmer's market, the return on investment is there from the farmer's market, which is really rewarding for us to see that happen, because that was our concept in the first place.
And I can definitely see the return for that for our economy here as well too. So.
Yeah. Plus we have, we have almost 300 new residences between the two apartment buildings, and you got a lot of younger people, generally speaking, that are out and about spending money on the
Any other questions?
So I'd move for approval, subject to the staff listed conditions and potentially a second look at the southeast corner elevation with staff.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Is anybody here from?
Yes, yeah, we have Gary Tree here representing Big B Coffee.
All right, we'll move on to item 3A3. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
It is 3A, 3B, 3C.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not jump ahead. 3A, 3B, and 3C.
Yeah.
Don't see that very often.
So, so Big B Coffee is a coffee kiosk here. Come on up. And they're located, they have roughly about 230 locations nationwide, based out of Michigan, and it's a to-go coffee chain. They're interested in locating on a small parcel that would be created on the south side of the parking lot here. If you're familiar, here's Target Shopping Center, and this is a separate lot here. Piggly Wiggly is the major anchor tenant within the shopping center. There's a lot of parking out in front, kind of your typical Highway 100 big box use, but they don't need all this parking, and a number of larger box retailers are starting to look at creating smaller outlots, the landlords, that is, they are, for retail types of tenants, in this case, Big B Coffee. So they'd be carving off a chunk of land via certified survey map, and then they're going through a conditional use process, because this would be a drive-up coffee use, and then also the site landscaping and architectural review. So those are our charges tonight in terms of what we're reviewing. The property zoned C3 community commercial districts, and the conditional use is required for the drive-through service facility within for this Big B Coffee. So just a closer look at this area. So we're going to zoom in now, just sort of at this area right here. Piggly Wiggly Shopping Center, the grocery store is up here. There's also other tenants over here, moving towards National Avenue, Cleveland Avenue on the south. There's the a bank building here on the south of the Piggly Wiggly site. But this is the general location of where the drive-through lane and store would be. Oops. I thought this was supposed to animate, but no, maybe not. And this is the certified survey map showing just roughly about a 0.24 acre parcel along the southern edge. There will definitely be access easements from National Avenue entrances across the southern extent of that lot, and then where it marries into the Target lot over here. Target store is up over in this location. Oh, here we go. So this is just sort of a, here's the engineering drawing, and I just tried to show something, a hack here of a little bit of an overlay with, showing this, the red line being the easement, and then the orange sort of corresponding to this 167-foot long, by 62-foot area here. And then the actual building, the Big B Coffee Kiosk, is roughly about 400, just under 500 square feet in area, and it would be, this black outline here. There is the Waterstone Bank building is to the south, and they do have, their main bank building, but they do feature, and provide a drive-through service, a detached drive-through service along their north property line, and just south of where Big B would be. There is a representative, Al here from Waterstone Bank tonight too. He's here to listen, and I think he may have some concerns with respect to the, the use and the proximity. We'll just get through this first. In terms of the site landscaping layout, taking a closer look at the actual site itself, they are proposing to remove, asphalt, saw-cut asphalt, install some landscaping. Certainly, there'd be a pad for the new construction of the coffee kiosk. It would feature a restroom. That restroom is for employees. There would be typically a couple employees staffing this facility. And then there would be an exit door on which would be a refuse enclosure for dumpster corral in that area. But everything leading up, the traffic configuration within this shopping center right now features angled parking. And when you come in off of National Avenue now, you have option to flow through this way and pass through over to Target if you're going that way, or if you're from Target, you can come through this way. But there's also other cross easements currently, from the Target site east-west, from Piggly Wiggly or Target across this way, and there's two-way traffic here now. What we're going to show in the next slide in the site plan is that this is going to be the traffic that comes in, and basically starting about this point, it's going to become directional. So it's going to be one-way westbound here to support the new drive-through service for Big B Coffee. It will still allow, though, for the turning movements for people to come up and come down this way. It's just that at some point here where the cutoff is, you're not going to be able to travel eastbound because it's going to be a directional type of flow. And we'll show that in the next slide here. So that's what's taking place here. National Avenue is on the far right side of the screen. If you come in on National and you come this way, you'll still be able to head north through these aisles or continue through this way and over to Target, or through this way and pick up a coffee. If you do happen to come down one of these aisles here, though, or if you're coming out of, let's say, the Waterstone Bank building, you're not going to be able to turn right like you would be able to now. You're going to have to go either straight north and then back down over here or over this way to get out on National, or you could head west into the Target lot, or that cross-access easement, and then exit onto Cleveland Avenue. So it's a little bit different. People's patterns would be, probably a little bit of a learning curve for some that you may need to change your habits. If you're a really big user now of loving to go eastbound on this particular portion of the Piggly Wiggly site, you're going to have to change your ways, I guess, and go with the flow, so to speak, the way this is being proposed and presented to us. But aside from that, this area on the eastbound side is primarily green space, and then you have the building, you have refuse enclosure with some additional landscaping. There is proposed to be a walk-up area here for pedestrians. This site is, though, largely based on a drive-through concept. So while there is an opportunity for people to walk up and maybe order a cup of coffee from the order window, I think the overwhelming percentage is going to be in a car, stacked here waiting for a cup of coffee to go and then go on your way. So in terms of the architectural look, there is this is the exterior look of the building. It features a veneer exterior on portions of the building, and then a hardy plank style or cementitious type of board siding on the exterior of the building. There would be naturally the window here for the walk-ups. This is a door for employees exiting and entering. And this is the drive-up. I'm sorry, this is the, where am I here?
was the drive up.
Yep, this is, I'm sorry, I guess I'm thrown off a little bit by the, yeah, so this is the drive-up window here, actually on the north elevation. Some of our directions are going to get changed up a little bit in our staff recommendation, but yeah, so this is the west elevation, this is the north elevation, and this would be south facing the bank, and this is the east upon your approach. And then just a basic floor plan, showing the kitchen area. This is the west side of the building, the walk-up window, and then the service door for employees, or storage area, employee restroom, and then you have a passage through over into the kitchen. So it's largely, it's not a place that the public is going to enter. It's really just for staff, for the public. If they do approach this site, they're going to be coming up and ordering from this window. But otherwise, we would expect the vast majority of traffic, to be customers to be in a car that would access their their coffee from this window here on the north side of the building. So we're recommending approval, subject to these conditions in your staff report. They are proposing a walk-up window, and we were suggesting in this that there be some allowance consideration of a patio area, and I guess we wanted the landscaping plan to be further reviewed by our city forester, as well as the traffic patterns have been analyzed by our city engineering department, and that's basically what's led to this evening's proposal. But we do want to sort of just run this back through our engineering department again, just to ensure that they're satisfied with this proposal. But basically, this plan right here that's been presented has gone through our engineering department, and the comments that engineering initially provided have been incorporated within the site plan that you're seeing here. So we feel relatively comfortable with this traffic pattern. Again, there is a learning curve, and there may be some other concerns from a budding neighbor, the bank to the south. We can certainly hear that, and I think there is some flexibility in terms of the location, the actual location of the building itself, and there may be some screening concerns, additional screening concerns, just to protect privacy of the adjacent drive-up area. But I guess at this point I'll just open it up to questions and further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Wayne, and then Kathleen.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Steve, you mentioned that the restroom is for the employees.
Yeah.
Will walk-up customer have access to the restroom?
Right now, that's not proposed as part of their proposal. This is again sort of a drive-through first, and then the walk-up is an option. I mean, Gary, you could probably explain it better than me.
By the way, the Advanced Building Corporation, we're the general contractor working with the Big B franchisee in the area rep and the Big B Corporation. And I'm in the process of building a half a dozen of these all over the state. I finished one in Franklin a year ago because I didn't cap you. This concept is just a drive-through only, and our understanding of the state health code is that you're okay with just a toilet room for the employees. But the moment you make it a seating area outside, then you trigger the need to provide a public restroom. Okay, so there is currently a patio shown here that's pretty large. I don't know if that would if that ends up like that, it would certainly end up being maybe some seating there, and we'd want to be putting a public toilet on there. We'd have to reconfigure the space. We are doing something very similar to this in Plymouth that has both a private and a public toilet room, because they have a seating area on site. In this case, we'd have to reorganize the way that the thing is laid out, because your public access to the toilet room would have to be here. So then the private toilet room would have to be somewhere in the center, and then this door for storage area, this would become your storage area. So that's all possible, but that would be what would be necessary. And that whole thing, that whole building could be shifted down a little bit and the site reorganized to relocate. Maybe the dumpster and the dumpster enclosure could go back here, so it's further away, and then you've got maybe some parking space here. This could be shifted down a little bit. You know, the whole concept is this sleeve here is where the facility will be located. But the crucial component is, this is the service window, so the traffic has to be this way. You have to change the traffic flow in order to make that work.
Will there also be food served, or is it just coffee?
There's no food prepared on site.
Okay.
But food will be warmed up. You'll be able to get bagels and things like that for the health code requirements.
I had a question. How from when you turn in, because you're going to kind of cross traffic to go in then, in the parking lot. So as you, yes. So, I mean, how many cars is that you can get in there and be in line without jamming anything up? That's what I'm asking you.
5 cars here.
Okay.
If that's your question. And there will be some, we're going to have to do some pavement markings and things in this area that we haven't really talked about yet, Steve, to reorganize, because the traffic pattern will typically be here, and maybe you get to this point right here, and then you're able to cross over into another one. Can you go back to the larger one?
Sure. Is it this one?
No, the more detailed, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're coming in here, and the way we've got this set up right now is the stacking occurs from here over. So you'd be able to come in off of West National.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know about this. So you come in this way here, and you'll be able to make a right turn here before the traffic changes. But when you get to this point, then it's going to become a one-way from there. So you're two-way from here, but it's really one-way because there's no traffic coming out this way. You know what I mean? Because this is going to be right turn only, because this will be one way going here. So if you take these arrows and you pull them back to here, that's where your stacking is going to start. So theoretically, you could have some stacking in front of these parking stalls.
I'm not worried so much about the stacking up by the building. I'm just like, you've seen other coffee shops here, and they have 12, 14, 15 in line in the morning, and that's why I'm wondering about that.
Well,
that's what I was curious about. So I don't know how fast it goes. That's
the company. Bigby's brand is created around an organized approach inside the building and efficient layout, so they're really able to prepare drinks quickly. And when you come, and their big spiel is that they can turn around more drinks more quickly than any other coffee chain in the country.
okay.
They train their employees to do that, and they organize their site with the speaker pole and the menu board a distance from here, so you've got 4 or 5 cars in between, so that you've got a pretty good velocity on the traffic through there.
Okay.
That's not to say that at a peak time they wouldn't have 7 or 8. I don't know. But that's what they propose as their operation model, and I know they trained it.
For me personally, I think the drive-through concept is great, but for the people that are walking up, if they don't have a patio or an indoor bathroom or anywhere for them to sit and have coffee, I feel like that's a little bit dangerous, especially if you have all that traffic coming through on that frontage.
I don't disagree with you. That could be alleviated by pulling this whole thing down 40, 60 feet, and then creating some parking stalls here. So the walked-up people could pull in and park, as opposed to have to parking over here and walking across traffic.
So you would have parking spaces for the walk-up?
That could easily
Okay.
be done. You know what I'm saying, Steve? You just shift this thing down,
Sure.
and then instead of, and maybe you pull this whole thing down here, and you take up 3 stalls here, and then those 3 stalls become active over there.
And then,
There's nothing magical about how long this
Sure.
is. That could be shortened up.
Or there's 200 parking spaces over here.
right,
There's no shortage of parking.
right, right.
Proposing parking stalls where that dumpster enclosure is shown right now?
No, the proposal does not have parking stalls there. The proposal is
No,
what.
just what he just referred to.
Oh, he's
But potentially.
There are options that could be done to address, Al, your concerns about efficiency and getting the dumpster away from where your baking occurs and pulling it down to the other end of the site. I think we can adequately address those by some modifications to the layout. I don't think that's a major issue.
I'd like to see some speed bumps around that area too. If we didn't add the parking space in that front to the west, maybe we have it over here, but then people walk up around, then it would be nice to have some speed bumps in that area too.
Just on the drive-through.
Right
Not through the drive-through, but the actual, the pass-through
Right, I guess
part?
I guess it depends on where the
I
pedestrians
don't.
are gonna be walking to and from.
Okay, let's
There's
talk
another
one at a time,
engineering
please.
drawing that goes along with this that takes and I think it takes the asphalt, cuts here, comes across here and all the way down here and then back down. And the purpose of taking out all of this asphalt is to create the right drainage pattern, okay? And so that'll all get put back, and as that gets put back, whatever traffic control measures would seem relevant could be incorporated.
Right, right. Yeah, because I'm thinking if, let's say somebody goes to Piggly Wiggly, they're parked up there on the northern side, and they want coffee. So they get out of their car, they walk through in front of the traffic that's in line, and then somebody gets hit. So enough traffic control measures in that area, or something like some paved lines showing like a walkway. Yep. Great.
Very fine. We have a representative from the bank here, am I right? Can we hear some of your concerns for this?
Director of Facilities. We're concerned with having the enclosure, of course, the dumpster enclosure right next to our canopy where customers are doing transaction, talking on the speaker. We don't like that. We don't, of course, like the look of a dumpster enclosure right next to where our customers are baking. And with the walk-up is concerning as well. Concerns that maybe somebody might park in our drive-through lane to walk up to their drive-through window for a coffee. Or we have a bus stop in front of us, so we have a lot of pedestrian traffic through our lot. We were required to put a sidewalk in from the city walk to our lot so people could walk through. So concerns that people might walk through our drive-through lanes to get to the walk-up window could be a concern. If they can shift it down, we can look at this again. But right now, having that so close to our drive-through, we're not in favor, and we don't like the fact that we're losing the right turnability out of our lot to get back to National Avenue without having to drive all the way down the parking lane to get to Piggly Wiggly, where now you're going to encounter potentially more pedestrian traffic if you're avoiding, where right now we can turn right out of our parking lot and go back to National Avenue. What kind of traffic control will be this to segregate the two lanes, one for the stacking and the drive-through versus traffic going west? Is that going to be a curb in between?
Right now, that's proposed as a
Paint line.
Paint line?
Yeah. We thought a curb would be too dangerous.
Okay. I don't know how you're going to, after all these years, change people's habits of not making that two-lane traffic as it is now. It's two-lane traffic, and now you're going to all of a sudden switch that to one-way traffic. I mean, our parking lot becomes kind of a throwaway for people that miss the first National Avenue entrance and cut through our lot to get to Target and Piggly Wiggly. We have that pretty regular. Cars are, cutting through our lot to get in there, and vice versa going the other way. A fence would definitely help along that property line to avoid the pedestrians walking through our drive-through to get to the walk-up window. That could definitely help. But yeah, we just don't want to look at the enclosure, and we don't like the idea of it being so close to our customer transactions.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Since this, and this is a question for staff, but since this was presented together, can it be separated? As an example, could items A and B be approved while C gets tabled to come back after revisions are made and further refinement? Or is it all in one right now?
It can be divided, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it sounds like we don't know what's happening yet. I mean, we have a concept site here, but I don't know that we have answers to parking, patio, public restroom, screening, to your comments. So I guess my, I don't know what the rest of anybody else feels, but my inclination, I mean, I like the use. I think it's a good use of trying to fit additional services in here. My inclination would be to table item C to come back next month or down the road once it's been a little bit further developed.
I guess my only question on that would be how far back would that delay the project, if any? A month?
I don't think that's a showstopper.
I mean, I think regardless, if I'm hearing you correct, you're going to be bringing versions back to staff regardless.
Yeah, I agree with you, and what we don't want to do as a neighbor is create a situation where there's disharmony already, okay?
Sure.
I'm the contractor, I'm the face of Big B right now. I can't speak for the franchisee and I can't speak for the landlord, but I know David and Diane Israel, the owners of this, are interested in seeing this happen, and they've given us a lot of latitude to try to make it work. I thought they might have reached out, or there would have been other public comments like from Al prior to this meeting, so I would have had a chance to respond to that. I want to respond to it now with some flexibility. What I would ask of the Plan Commission, and I don't know if you can even do this, is how could we do this so you could empower staff to provide some guidance and then bring it back to you for final approval in September.
Yeah, I think that would be the process. I assume you're going to bring it up, but I think we'd like to see it again before. Yes.
I have a quick question. Could you reverse it? the driving part, so everything goes out this way instead of crossing lane, and then if they can go on and they can come around and then go through the drive. I'm throwing something out there. Then you can flip flop everything. The refuse would be close, and then you wouldn't have to worry about anybody actually making transactions right there. I'm just.
That's a great question, and I don't have a good answer.
Okay.
Because I think that, I asked that question when we started, because the first thing we looked at was, well, if we're going to do this and it's going to be the traditional layout, we have to change the direction, or we're going to create traffic conflict. But by changing or making it all one way, that's changing traffic patterns. So that's a great question. We could do this without changing traffic patterns but then you're serving coffee on the passenger side. Right?
You're right.
Yeah.
So if you bring,
yes, I don't go through the coffee, so I'm sorry. You're right. Nope.
The passenger's picking up the coffee.
You're right.
And that doesn't work.
Okay.
You'd have to flip the building.
You'd have to actually
up there
flip
and have
everything.
this
Okay.
We have to do
side.
this, and then it compromises
Yep,
parking
nope.
and everything up there, and
Okay.
that was a deal breaker.
I wasn't even thinking about that. So.
Would you both be open to the idea of moving the property east a little bit and moving the refuse area to the back there?
Oh, yeah, I think a good solution is put refuse over here.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that prevents this building, we didn't look at it this way, but there's nothing that prevents this building from being put right here. And then, you bring in here, except that it kind of screws this up, but I'd have to have Chris take a look at this, but we might could set that thing right there. And the stacking distance is key. We need to make sure we got enough stacking distance, and we've got enough here, and this is for excess. That would be excess. If we put it here, then the stacking gets to be in the entryway or the approach from National. So, but certainly anywhere along here, I think would work.
How would that work for you with the bank?
It would be better. It would definitely be better if it went more to the east, because that's more parking. Another thing is, I don't know, I heard briefly at the beginning, what is Pig going to do with all their snow in the parking lot? That right now, that area is a snow pile all winter long, and typically in spring, they're coming to our lot because they're parking, there's cars down and put them back.
Thankfully, we don't have a shortage of pavement to store
I think
snow in there.
address that and make sure that they're not doing it. I'll take that question back to David.
I think maybe they put some of it down between the Target and their building.
Yeah.
That's where they put some of it for now.
Yeah.
The one,
I sense this is, For me, I standpoint, I think this is the wrong location. I think it's a great concept, but the wrong location. And I say that because if you look across the street, Highway 100, and go to the Starbucks, that facility typically has 10 to 12 cars backed up. It's just jammed. And even though you report that Bigley is very efficient, the most efficient coffee delivery company in the country, I think that there's not enough room here. And it concerns me, and I think that getting people to change their traffic patterns is going to be an impossible task. And I happen to be one who cuts through the bank's parking lot at least once a week.
I do think the one-way I don't know, and this is anecdotal from my experience, the one-way traffic I don't see as a huge deal because I think there's a lot of traffic that comes off of National and cuts through to get to Target. But I don't know how often the reverse happens, that people are, because you have to navigate kind of to the middle of the aisle to come back the other ways. From what I've seen, a majority of the traffic is already one way, although I can't speak for people exiting the Piggly Wiggly, I guess, but.
I could look back at surveillance video and
Yeah.
probably give you a traffic count.
There's another way out, which is the least intensive, but cutting between the two buildings and then exiting out to 102nd Street is probably one of the best routes to go to avoid all the conflicts here in Cleveland and National Avenue. It's my approach, but maybe not everyone's.
It appears that there's a lot of work that has to be done. And I would move that we table and let that work get done.
I tend to agree with you. I was, if it was helpful to move a portion of it forward, but really 3A may change. I mean, your CSM may be shifting depending on what happens here. So while I'm supportive of the project, I think it needs to. I think you need to continue to work with staff and come back.
Well, the one question that I would have, that I'd have to share with both David and the franchisee was, is the concept feasible? Because it appears to me that the potential deal breaker for the council and for Al and company is having to make this route of people coming out of his business and going out to West National this way. And if that is a deal breaker, then it's futile for us to try to rearrange this if the overall traffic pattern doesn't work. If you all think the traffic pattern works, then I think we can come back with a solution that will address all the other concerns. But I don't have a solution for the traffic pattern.
It's more or less a
I
clockwise
just,
pattern.
from shopping there, there's a lot of space, and I mean, just looking at the parking in this photo, there's a lot of room. I think it would fit there. I think it can go there.
Is it possible for them to take out those islands on that end of the lot and move them down part of it, shorten up their rows so that you can keep two-way traffic and just shift the traffic lane a little bit, to the north?
The islands were just recently put in the 19th century, so that's part of the
Long
challenge.
contractor can move.
The lease with Piggly Wiggly also requires a minimum number of parking stalls. And we're at that minimum number once we take away the stalls that are currently there and reinstall some stalls behind the store to provide parking. So there's been some readjustment of lease requirements that way. So I don't have a good answer. Cost-wise, it would be an issue. Is it possible? Yeah. Would it compromise the parking stalls? I think it would reduce the stalls by another 7 or 8 to maintain that two-way parking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the difference here with this parking lot too, is that it's directional in nature, the way it sits right now. You can only go one way down this aisle. You can go one way down this aisle. So I mean, to say now that you can only go one way here, in our opinion, I don't think it really affects this negatively. People don't go again, I mean, so there's a directional nature to this, and if you do happen to come in and hang a hard left, I mean, you're just going to be going west, and at any point, on this aisle, for instance, you can go north. or here. So,
I think too, when we talk about driving behavior, I mean, you look at that lower half of the Target lot, you look at the lower half of the Piggly Wiggly lot, and how many times have we been in a department store or shopping center and people are just cutting straight across to get to the exit
Right.
as the crow flies the way it is. So I not that it's right, but it happens, and I think.
right.
Then I got my neighbor here who drives into the bank illegally.
I'd like to just step back to that snow issue.
Okay.
The amount of snow, of course, it depends on the year, that gets piled up just down there close to where the other bank is. It's a massive mound, and it doesn't disappear until June. Where are we going to put that snow? Right now, it's just a massive amount of snow.
I would request that this is, because that is primarily Piggly Wiggly's lot, that's not really the focus of tonight's as much, and we do have some time constraints that we would ideally like to move along through. I think we have a motion and a second. I mean, we'll be having this discussion.
I don't know
again.
if we even had a
Do we have a
motion.
second?
Yeah, I made the
Wayne
motion.
did make the motion.
What your motion was to
My
table
motion
it?
is to table, let the
I'd
parties get
second.
back together.
Second.
Let's have a vote.
Any other discussion? Motion to table, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. See you in a month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will
Gary, I will continue to work on it.
increase the speed a little bit here as we've
All right.
moved through the two most complicated projects.
4A4B, go.
4A4B is Xlock Biosciences. This is an existing office. They're a biopharmaceutical research and development company. They have labs in the Frederick Medical College of Wisconsin campus. They are proposing to move their labs into their existing office. The labs are very, very minimal. They're essentially a refrigerator and some electrical outlets. They produce proteins that could be used as anti-inflammatory for anti-inflammatory drugs, such as for diseases like psoriasis. They're proposing to move it into this location, and that changes their use from an office and neighborhood service use to a research laboratory use. So they have to go through the conditional use process. They aren't proposing any exterior changes to the site. They are proposing some minor interior modifications to essentially add the lab into their existing office space.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion?
Process.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
So pick up the pace.
We have already improved our efficiency by 33%. Item 5.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 5 is for O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts is moving to a new location, the former Michael's store at 11135 West National Avenue. The goal of this is to be a specialty store that's at a more strategic location, so it's going to be a larger store that's really intended to serve the broader Milwaukee market. There were some site changes proposed, and this triggered staff to look at some of the parking requirements. We noted that they are over the maximum number of parking stalls allowed. So we worked with O'Reilly and came to a compromise. The maximum base parking code would allow them 75 stalls. They're currently at 121 parking spaces. Based on their operations plan, they would like to have a little more flexibility than those 75 stalls. They requested 90 stalls. They kind of demonstrated this need through some stats for what they expect from customers and from their own employees and from other vehicles. And staff supports this compromise. We believe this is a step in the right direction to reestablish the non-conforming use at a more appropriate number of parking stalls. They'll be proposing to add green space along green space islands along National Avenue and close off these parking stalls, add them to their green space that is kind of adjacent to a residential development to the southwest. What kind of triggered all of this was that they were proposing to reconfigure some of their parking lot, including relocating the walkway to the pedestrian walkway from National to the entrance. Common Council is not required to waive the parking requirement because the site's already a legal non-conforming use. So this Plan Commission is their final step. Here's just some pictures of the site today. This is where the pedestrian walkway would be relocated to. Here's just an existing conditions of some of that parking area that would be amended as part of this plan. Staff's recommendation is to approve the plans, including some conditions. The landscaping plan approved by Forestry, I believe they either have or I think they have submitted the landscaping plan. Yeah, our Forestry Department is looking at that. Staff would also just like to confirm the lighting plan. This may be one we have on file. We just want to work with them appropriately on that. And then we added one condition from what was included in the staff report, which we would recommend the Plan Commission include. This is to have no overnight semi-trailer truck parking there. This is because we've essentially, there's been a problem at this site, mostly because it's been vacant for a long time, where there's semi-truck drivers parking there overnight and idling their vehicles. We don't believe this would be a problem, once a new business is occupying the site, but we want to kind of include this as part of the conditions of the site. If there's any objection there.
No,
Okay.
we do get overnight deliveries 5 nights
Yeah.
a week, but that happens in between like midnight and 4 a.m. But they don't sit and idle.
Yeah,
They
okay.
just get out, unload, and
Yeah.
move on.
Great. Yeah, and that's really what that intent of that is, just to prevent the full night parking, which we've sometimes seen now. Yes, question?
Is there any exterior work being proposed?
Just
with
the
this?
exterior work is just in the site.
Just the site,
just
nothing on the
site,
building?
Nothing on
They
the
would
building.
come back with signage?
Signage would be just through our sign plan
Okay.
process. There wouldn't necessarily need to be anything through the plan commission.
Thank you.
And this would be closing the location on Greenfield and Highway 100?
No, we're not planning to close any locations.
Oh, okay.
The goal
cool.
with this is to just get more parts in the market, so you're not having to wait overnight for a part. You can get it in a couple hours versus a couple days.
Questions?
I thought in this document it said that you were relocating,
That would have been my mistake. Not
and you're not relocating.
apologies.
We're relocating, but I can find out and I can send you an email.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate it.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Aye.
Okay, got it. Not that one.
Go by alphabetical in favor.
Yeah.
Are you
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. We'll go to item 6.
Item 6 is for the Blue Mound Training Center. This is an existing training center for We Energies, located just south of I-94. This is a facility that they use to train their employees or contractors in working with their equipment. They are proposing a 2,000 square foot addition to the existing kind of garage space here. This will enclose a confined space training module that they have that's currently outdoors. So just kind of bringing that into their footprint of their building. Property is zoned M1. A little view of the site here. So this is the existing building situated in the southwest kind of corner of the site, next to the parking area. This is the proposed addition here, which will this kind of the floor plan. Look at it. It's basically just an empty room, other than the existing confined space module that's currently located outdoors. It's where they train people on how to work in confined spaces. So they're just adding this new building as an addition to the existing building. Look at the architectural plan. They'll be using cementitious panels, adding cementitious panels near the base to protect from wear and tear. That's along where it's paved. This part of the addition where it's unpaved, there will not be those cementitious panels, as it's not going to be having the same kind of salt spraying up against it, stuff like that. They're going to be using a complementary paneling, not trying to exactly copy the existing paneling, but a different color to kind of complement it. There's going to be adding in an exterior door on kind of the east side of the elevation here as kind of an ingress-egress. Otherwise, it will all be kind of accessed through the internal, kind of already through the inside of the building there. So we don't have any additional conditions of approval, and we recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second, any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thanks, man.
And then we'll have
You're
item
welcome.
7, house cleaning.
All right, so this item we will be requesting you vote upon tonight. This is for a series of zoning code edits. You may remember back in May we had a pretty significant overhaul to the zoning code. Since then, staff has just kind of identified some small tweaks that we would like to make, as well as some additions that weren't considered the first time. One of the we'll go through a couple of the bigger ones first, and then there's a lot of just minor stuff that we're including in the staff report, which we won't really have to touch on unless you all have questions or anything about that. One of the larger changes is really just a change of words, but we would like to change our manufacturing districts to industrial districts. Essentially, when we were reviewing the code and we were kind of reviewing some of the stuff with our city attorney, we kind of recognized that manufacturing doesn't encompass all of industrial uses, but industrial uses do encompass all manufacturing uses, and we want to go to kind of a more accurate term to define that. So that would just be changing some of those district names from M1 to I1, for example. Another more significant change would be to add a new use for advanced manufacturing. And this is something that really came up when through our economic development team. They've been working with several groups who are kind of more modern types of manufacturers who, there's a lot of growth happening in this kind of, part of the industry across the country where there's more technology, more robotics, more clean manufacturing processes that are often really job dense, and the city may like to see in broader areas of the community rather than the kind of limited space we have for those industrial uses right now. So when we were looking at how the city could better attract and accommodate these uses, we identified that giving them more leeway in the zoning code is one way to do so. So we're proposing to add a new use category, advanced manufacturing. This would be allowed in our C3 and C4 districts as a conditional use, and then in those I1, I2 districts as a permitted use. So it's kind of like similar to our light industrial, but goes a little bit further. And this would have a very strict definition, which would say that the act of converting raw materials into finished products by using manual or mechanized transformational techniques in a manner that does not produce any vibration, odor, emission, or noise outside the building. Right now, our light industrial definition, does allow for essentially noise, and noise and odor and vibrations on the property to some degree. This would constrain all of those to just within the building, so that if you were walking outside the building next door, you would never even know what was going on inside. That's kind of the intent of this kind of stricter definition, is that if there's a manufacturing facility that meets those kind of strict standards, then they could really have a broader range of places in the city that they could locate. Kind of adds to our thinking of more mixing of uses across the city in some of our commercial districts. If there's really appropriate manufacturing uses there, that could be an interesting way to kind of blend some of these into our communities. So that was something our economic development team, city's attorney's office, and planning office all kind of worked on. Do you guys have any questions or comments about this change? I know this one's a little maybe more significant than some of the wording changes that are some of the rest of the document, but nothing.
Questions?
All right, then we have a host of other changes. A couple I'll touch on. The 3 to 4 unit dwellings, right now they're kind of restricted in some ways in our commercial districts. We'd like to make them outright permitted uses in our commercial districts to allow greater ease at making mixed-use developments. And we have a lot of commercial corridors right now where there's small apartment buildings that we think add to the community, add to the sense of a mix of interesting uses along those corridors, and we'd like to promote that type of mixed-use development. Another thing is adult daycares. One thing that was kind of overlooked in our zoning code overhaul back in May was the adult daycares were stricken from the code as part of the simplification effort, and instead of being combined with the child care centers, which is a conditional use across pretty much all districts, they kind of no longer defining them, they've ended up being falling more appropriately into the neighborhood service category, which isn't really what we intended. It really restricts them to just commercial districts, and it makes them a permitted use as well. So we want to kind of fix the intent of that and include those as conditional use across all districts. A few other changes just to touch on. We would like to add hotels into C2. This is kind of a weird remnant of the old code that hotels weren't allowed in C2, and we don't really see why that's a problem. A couple other changes. We would like to institute some caps for the bike parking minimums we instituted. We've had some projects that we looked at them and we realized we'd be requiring them to put in, say, 40 bike parking spaces. We don't want to create a burden for a use that isn't going to be super heavily used. We want to encourage a reasonable amount of bike parking at places. So we'd say, most of these caps are no more than 10. So, if there's a really large shopping center, it would say, basically they have to provide at least 10 bike parking spaces, but we aren't going to require them to just build maybe 100 or something that would be required based on those formulas we had. So that's kind of the goal of that one. And the Planning Commission can always request more bike parking spaces, or depending on the circumstances during site landscaping review. Yeah.
So what's the addition for the fences in the front yards? What is
So
that about?
Yeah, so that the fencing in the front yards of commercial and industrial areas. Let me. That's just for those areas. Let's see. I think we wanted to clarify something about that. Let's see if I can find it in my cheat sheet quick. Okay, we wanted to add that right now it's the way the terminology is, it doesn't explicitly mention that fences are allowed in the front yards of commercial and industrial areas. And we're now specifying that they are allowed in accordance with an approved site plan. So ensuring that there is a Planning Commission review for if they are going to be doing that. I think right now the way it's written, they might be able to just put those in necessary, I guess without one.
Without a site plan, yeah. So we want to
just not mentioned in it.
Yeah, we want to clarify so it's at least noted in the plan that they should at least submit a site plan when you're installing a fence or something similar.
Yep.
The second N article in jewelry, I just want to hit that real quick, is that
Steve knows more
with that one, it was those two got sort of consolidated in the new code update, and in the previous code they were distinct uses. A resale shop was different from a secondhand article jewelry store, and we want to create that distinction between the two because we feel a resale shop, whether you're selling used sporting goods or clothing, should be permitted use in commercial zoning districts, whereas a secondhand jewelry store, sometimes pawn shops or cash for gold, we think that should be a conditional use and limited to where those would be located in the city, like it was in the previous ordinance. So we want to make that correction here as well.
Yep. The way it was kind of the way we changed it ended up restricting those retail stores more than we wanted to.
Gotcha.
And then one other thing to touch on is just Cale went through the antenna and wireless facility kind of regulations, and he looked at some of the newer case law related to that and updated some of those. There's some details laid out in the staff report that I don't know if I quite understand 100%, but it's better than what we had before. So
we want to meet state statutes with it.
Yes, we're just trying to comply with state law with that one.
Yeah.
For the 3 to 4 unit dwellings, now does that apply in all residential?
So the change, that one is allowed right now in our RB district and our C district as permitted uses. It's not allowed in those RA districts. The change here is that they're allowed in they're allowed in a couple of our commercial districts that I believe as a conditional use. That's what it is, and we want to make them permitted in those districts. They don't put a lot of necessarily strain on services. There's not necessarily something that that a really major review is necessary for those kind of really small apartment buildings. Obviously, when you get to the five or more unit dwellings, that's when you could get this Sona lofts or something like that. We definitely want those to kind of go through those full city processes, but something as small as that we don't think is necessary.
Planning Commission will still be involved in the review of the construction documents prior to the building permit.
Yeah, it just wouldn't go through the common council.
Gotcha.
All right, any questions? Any questions with these? And then we would we do need an approval tonight. Yeah, it's a recommendation for the common council. The common council will be taking this up.
We hope on the 20th.
The 20th of September.
I'll move for approval.
Yeah.
Wait, Jessica. Okay. Okay.
We were on a quick draw there, right,
Okay,
Wayne?
all right. Yep, got it. All right, all in
I
favor?
thought we were doing alphabetical. Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Design review guidelines. So tonight we will not be voting on the design review guidelines or going through those. We want to go through these more and get them in your hands so that next month we can have a vote on the design review guidelines. And if you vote to approve them, to recommend approval, then the Common Council could approve them at their following meeting. So our timeline is looking like early October is when the design review guidelines could be adopted. So tonight we just want to kind of go through these as a group and answer any broad questions you guys have, and then you'll all be able to review these over the next month, and we'll be able to address them and hopefully vote on them in September. So some background. I know we've touched on this before, but the current design guidelines were adopted in 1999. And we want to really refresh this kind of, we updated the zoning code, and now we want to, that's the kind of the front hand part, and now we want to address the kind of back end here, the design guidelines. And the goal of this is to really improve our process, making it more consistent and objective, and making the communication between the applicants and us and our staff and you as Plan Commission, making that communication cleaner and smoother, and then really ultimately giving us more, improved capability to leverage better design from the proposals that come through here by better expressing what our community wants and really overall enhancing our environment. So to use the guidelines, kind of an overview of how that would work. Before the application, we would have these available on the website. We would share them with potential applicants so they could review them as they kind of get into how they want to design their projects. Then we would have these guidelines be essentially a type of approval criteria that should be met as part of our design review. We would essentially be kind of the staff would say, this is a project that the design guidelines will apply to for that essentially would probably cover new developments and really significant redevelopments. Smaller changes we wouldn't have to apply these guidelines to those smaller projects. That's something that we could kind of take on a case by case basis. The guidelines then would be useful for actually kind of framing our discussion during the meetings if needed. The staff would be completing this Plan Commission checklist, which we would create with each project. This would be something that would be shared in the staff report, noting whether a project meets a guideline, does not meet it, or if it's not applicable, and then we'd be able to add any notes in there as well. That could help kind of inform our decision as a Plan Commission. And it would inform our recommendation as staff and what to include in terms of conditions as well. And then ultimately the goal is that the Plan Commission will be basing the decision on those guidelines. So overall, we have three main goals for our guidelines, and then a series of objectives underneath those. So that's kind of how that's structured. There's three big goals, a couple objectives underneath each, and then there's 4 guidelines for each objective. So just going through these quickly today. One of our first goal is context. So having design fit the site right there and fitting it to the neighbors. One of the guidelines under our neighbor grouping is to contribute to a street wall that's vibrant and fine grained. So that means having buildings that are appropriately enclosing the street space. Our downtown is obviously known for having those buildings up to the front lot line and kind of creating a unique sense of place there. Having interesting details at that personal level, so it's not just a big block, where it's just a single development that's just featureless. That's kind of the goal of that fine grain part of that. For design guideline number 2 here, scaling the building mass to the context. That's really just thinking about when you're actually putting the mass of the building together, where do you want to have the bulk of it concentrated? You don't necessarily want a ton of the building right next to maybe a small single family house. Maybe better to put that by the corner, by those main street frontages. That's kind of intent of that one. The third is to reinforce the historic structure. So if there's a building, this one will probably often be not applicable, but if we have a building next to one of our historic West Dallas buildings, making sure that the building's respectfully designed, to accommodate the neighbor there. The fourth one is one we'll see frequently is building and maintaining the connectivity of neighboring sites. This picture here obviously is of Kegel's table and the public table and Kegel's, and I was mixing them up. How they have that kind of cross access, the shared use of space out there. Obviously, with a lot of our larger developments, like when we were looking at Makers Row today, how to connect the sites so that people can walk throughout the whole development. That's something we want to keep in mind. For this context for this specifically for the site, one of our big ones that I know has come up before is orienting the front of the building to the primary street frontage. Another one is if there's a unique shape of the lot or unique features of the site. If a new development can really accentuate those or capitalize on them, like maybe this old building here where the Epicos Church is, it really comes to a head at the corner there. That can create a more unique space in West Dallas and kind of make us more of a unique destination. If there's a redevelopment project, repurposing remnants of the site or historical parts of the facade is always beneficial. And we also want additions that are created to reference what's already there. We don't want an addition to look completely different than completely different or really monotonous with what's already there. We want it to complement the architecture in a strong way. Our second major category then is how a development interacts with the public realm. So our first objective here is to have an active ground floor. This is something that in our survey that we put out to members of the public, one of our most frequently cited things about why people think there's a project has really good design is because it's really active, outdoor space, active, really inviting ground floor there. So with this, one of our objectives would be, or one of our guidelines would be to design tall, clear commercial ground floors. The taller ground heights are generally in urban design are considered stronger, kind of design principle that's more engaging, and you can have these big windows that people can look in and really see into the building and kind of activate, kind of blend that space, I guess, between the public and private realms there. Another category would be to soften the street edge. We don't want necessarily just to have a building line and then the street right there, but having some good thoughtful blending of where the landscaping is and how maybe the site's graded between where the building is and where the street level is. Another thing we want to include as a guideline, or as a guideline here, would be to locate those active uses next to the public sidewalk where possible. This is something we have a lot of businesses that do this very well, and this new Makers Row development is another good example of having outdoor eating areas along that public sidewalk along 66th Street. Another one is to not include blank walls along street frontages, and then if there are blank walls, remediate those in some way. What's this called? The heritage, the landmark.
Yeah.
That's like obviously a good example of they had this blank wall which was detrimental to the design of the area, and they were able to make that a more engaging space with the use of a mural. The second objective here is to build for people, to build spaces that people want to be in and that they want to enjoy. One of those is offering these kind of intentionally publicly accessible spaces with unique features so that people would actually want to stay there, places to sit, places to eat, things like that. Another one is to place, when you have an outdoor space, place it in a way that's going to be used. You don't want it to be, you're way tucked in the corner of the site. That's not going to be, usually it's something that's pretty self-explanatory, but we want to make that clear. A third guideline is if there are a site that's built out, obviously there's not as many opportunities to do some of this stuff. But you can still kind of integrate amenities into the design. This is the pottery,
Cream City
Clay on Greenfield. My brain's getting kind of shot. It has been a long one. Cream City Clay here does a good job of their building kind of having that kind of small canopy. The recess of the building there gives you a little space for some shade and some space to kind of gather your things up right when you're exiting the building. Stuff like that can even be useful for those built-out sites. And then again, providing pedestrian pathways and connections on those, especially on those full block developments, is something we always want to encourage. The last part of the public realm is mitigating the impacts of those less desirable but necessary functions and services of developments. So locating parking away from the public sidewalk where we can, away from the street, tucking that towards the rear of the property. And then if it does have to be kind of near one of those things, making sure you have enough buffering with landscaping or with public realm space, little patio area or something like that, that can make that a more inviting area. Additionally, placing refuse areas, loading docks, utilities, placing those away from the street-facing area is going to be better for creating better design that's more public facing. The third guideline here is preventing that lighting spill off the lot and shielding our lighting. Right now we have a lot of our lighting guidelines kind of separately laid out in a document. We want to essentially get rid of that old document and kind of be able to blend these in here. So this guideline kind of addresses that kind of spill of lighting and not having lighting shielded. And then the fourth item here is to use thoughtful fencing and masonry walls. when you have a the building lot next to another, or if you have want to have fencing or some sort of wall along the public realm, it should be designed in a good manner, not just chain link fence, which in our standards later on you'll see is specifically not allowed. And then the third part here is quality. So this is we want to have quality design in West Dallas. First part of this is for the building itself, so using quality materials that are going to stand the test of time, not EFIS. Secondly, really emphasizing the ground floor and the entrances, bringing in some, more thoughtful, unique design choices to there can make it a more exciting place. And that's something like with Maker's Row today, we had, that the initial Dairyland, I think it was kind of Spartan. We want there to be some interest at that kind of level where you're walking into the building. We want to have some, attention to detail in that area where people are really going to have a lot of eyes on the building. Third, integrating the exterior building features into the design. So, if you have awnings or canopies or windows, making that, really thoughtfully, put together and, coherent in what materials are used and the patterns that you have, stuff like that. And then lastly, just a catch-all using quality design approaches, and we can list some of those out more specifically in the subheading of that. Having it designed with thoughtful approaches in terms of when you look at the building, where do you enter it? Stuff like that. It's all that's a quality design approach. So we wanted to have some sort of catch-all that we could really if we have a building that's not really well put together, we can enforce it through that as well. And then our last objective is for environmental quality. We want sites to protect and incorporate their natural features. If you have a nice grove of trees in a development, if you can keep those existing trees, that's always a plus for environment and for the look of the development and the feeling of our community. Designing sites to manage stormwater runoff where possible, using like native landscaping, that's always a plus as well. Reducing the impervious surface with landscaping and public plazas, things like that. So that's another guideline we'd like to include. And then last, embodying kind of sustainability. When if there's a development, using renewable energy as part of it, solar panels or low carbon materials, that's something we'd like to encourage. But really, most of them will probably fit under density. Density is obviously inherently sustainable. Everything is closer. If we have most of our development is going to be infill development, most of it will be promoting the density of the city. So this is something we expect most of our projects to meet here. But we want to encourage and bring to mind some of the other things those developments could do as well. Then the last section here is just a list of technical standards. So the more measurable, those are all the squishy, qualitative stuff. We want to have a list of some of the measurable standards that aren't included in the zoning code, but we want to include in the design guidelines, so that specifically doesn't allow certain materials or certain fencing types like chain link. Although that will still be in this draft, we have it still allowed in industrial areas if it's industrial next to industrial and it's not against the street. We also have some lot landscaping percentage requirements, and one interesting one for commercial uses. When there's that kind of that first floor street facing facade, we want that to be activated in a way that there's more storefront transparent storefront windows that you can actually see through. That's a good practice as well. So those are just a draft of our technical standards. This is something we might expand on a little bit more when we bring this to you next month, but that's what we have for now. And so I kind of already give you an overview of the next steps, but if you guys have any questions or comments about it this time, and then if not, feel free to reach out to me and Steve if you do have questions, or if you have ideas about what could be tweaked in the code or in the guidelines, or if you see a certain building in West Dallas that you think this is a good example of something we'd love to see, that stuff as well, and we can possibly incorporate that into the guidelines as well. So anything else from you all? But if not, that's the end of this item. We'll be voting on it next time.
Any questions?
How many new revisions are there? There's the zoning code revision, and then now we have a goals.
The guidelines,
the guidelines, and then is there anything else city's implementing?
We are also working on some rezonings, which I think we wanted to mention to you today.
Zoning,
the split zoning, that's one of our other things. It kind of goes hand in hand, I guess, with the zoning code update. During that there's all that split zoning. We want to eliminate that, and our goal is to have an updated zoning map that we'll have where it's, instead of being drawn out by the lines cutting through stuff, just encompassing the streets and everything. We want the zoning map to be kind of like parcel by parcel, specific to each parcel. So that's probably the other big change coming is just the rezoning stuff. And we think next month will be we're going to have a public information meeting for Beloit and Lincoln. There's 160 properties that we're going to recommend rezonings to eliminate the split zoning. That would be a public information meeting on the 13th next month, and then it would come to Planning Commission at the end of the month, and then it would be approved by council in early October, or voted on by council in early October. Yep.
And what are the new strategic years? Is that
Oh, Steve, you.
Yeah, 2022 through, was it?
2024? Or is it like a 2-year or 5-year?
Is it 10?
The comprehensive plan, you're saying?
No, you're talking about comprehensive plan or the strategic vision?
Yeah, city
Oh, that
strategic
was
I think
plan.
it's a
done in
5-year.
2022. I think that's a 5-year.
Is it a
Yeah,
5-year?
5-year,
Okay.
yeah.
And then it's constantly moving, though. It's
Right.
constantly
Okay.
updated.
Just curious.
A lot of plans.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Just trying to get them all down and.
I'm ready to go, but I'm going to ask a question anyway. I apologize, Wayne. How do you envision the guidelines being used? Is there any authority behind it, or do you? I know staff you guys already do a great job of vetting projects before they come to us, but do you see this as kind of if they're not hitting the numbers, that it comes to us, then it gets sent back or gets rejected at that point, or how?
Yeah, so we want the guidelines to be something that, we want there to be the Plan Commission to have more leverage. Right now we have guidelines, but they're pretty outdated. We don't really reference them very often. We want these to be something that's kind of more an active part of the Plan Commission process. So all big projects coming through, we'll have the checklist and we'll go through it. And we expect, most of the time, it'll all be goes, because we'll have already done that as staff, and we'll have worked with them and said, hey, like, these are parts that we think can be improved, and then it'll be leveraged to get better design. But if there's a project where we're really seeing issues with it, and that's like an opportunity then for Plan Commission to say, this is something we would like to see an improvement on, and that's kind of where that comes into play. Yeah.
We're hoping that's going to just deliver a better plan from the get-go. Just given the expectations rather than negotiating so much all the time.
Yeah, and then it just kind of gives us a clear framework to work with too, versus right now it's a little bit ad hoc, like, each project, different things come into mind, and this gives us a good way to look at it.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Any tracking updates?
Oh yeah, project tracking, we can do this quickly. Chiquero El Toro, there was a sign plan that you all approved a few months ago, and they installed the monument sign, and it was improperly installed, and it was blocking the vision triangle. So that was a bit of a hassle, but we worked with them, and it was removed. They also installed some window signage that was like covering all of the windows on that building, and we worked with them to get that back into compliance with the sign code as well. TBD, that was an accident in there. The rezonings, I think I touched on this earlier. I guess this is where we're going to put this in. But we talked about it already. But next week we'll be bringing that to you guys as well. So that's kind of it for the project tracking. Not a lot of building permits and stuff approved from Plan Commission projects this last month.
Next month we'll all find out what was to be determined.
Yeah.
Any updates on bread peddlers over there on 92nd?
Yes,
when they plan to open?
They actually just applied for an Artscape grant. They have a really cool mural, and we should have thought to get a picture of that in there. That they there's an artist from some other state,
Texas,
I think Austin, Texas. He designed a mural for them. It's got a bunch of cool colors and flowers, and they have a bike and some bread and some coffee on it. It's very, very nice. They applied for an Artscape grant, and so they're working through that with Sean Miller from our economic development team. But I think we've heard rumors of their expected opening. I think it's coming up in the next month or so, but no exact date yet.
I think that was my first one I ever voted on. That's why I brought that up.
Nice.
So,
I'd move to adjourn.
Second. I was first.
We're first. All right.
All in favor of adjournment?
uh,